Our last speaker for the evening is Anjali Yagnik. I met Anjali 30 years ago, is what we realized today when we saw each other, both with our graying hair. Anjali has a practice in Bangalore, a rather prolific one, which she started with her husband, who she unfortunately lost a few years ago, but she's retained that practice with fervor.
So good evening, everybody. As mentioned by Shimul, I practice architecture in Bangalore. And what I'm going to do today is to project images of our work. It has started. While I talk about the issues that concern me and inform my architecture. I'm actually coming back to the core issue of women architects. So coming back to that, I find that I have been always somewhat uncomfortable with this term because I feel that the task or the opportunity at hand and the environment that we thus create is what is paramount, and that the architect is only a medium, being quite incidental after the fact. So it really should not matter whether a woman, a man, or anyone who does not believe in gender stereotypes has achieved what they have. I also believe, due to a strong layperson's interest in evolutionary biology, that women and men are different animals with different chemicals which influence different behaviors running through their bodies. But there doesn't appear to be any quality except for brute strength, which does not play a big role in modern life, which makes one set of behaviors superior or inferior to the other, and makes it characteristic of gender, even though they are often perceived as such, with qualities associated with typically male behavior being given an elevated status. However, the term woman architect does make sense when we realize that the default gender for an architect is male. I'm not aware of any presentations or discussions that are centered on male architects and their work. So we do need to correct this perception and make it more fair and inclusive. I have been a feminist for as long as I can remember. Part of this comes from my interactions as someone belonging to a matrilineal community with the essentially patriarchal nature of most other societies. Traditionally, in our community, both daughters and sons took their mother's family name, and family assets were inherited by daughters. So this made them economically secure, safe from abuse, and ultimately confident and capable women if they so chose to be. So such women naturally find unthinking discrimination based on gender absolutely unfair and oppressive. I was also greatly influenced by the writings of Simone de Beauvoir, whom I discovered as a young adult in 1978. I was drawn to the clear, honest, and fair way in which she wrote about feminist issues. In fact, her father is reported to have said that Simone thinks like a man, which is in itself a telling statement. So what are the discriminatory words or actions that women architects or students face, and which come in the way of allowing them to realize their full potential? I don't believe I faced any discrimination whatsoever from my teachers at CEPT or at Berkeley. They discussed our projects with us and graded us just as they did for our male colleagues. I find this to be the case even today, at the CMR University School of Architecture in Bangalore, where I teach architectural design as visiting faculty. In fact, almost 2/3 of the faculty and students at CMRU are women, and the issue of discrimination seems to have faded into the background. I must also admit that I didn't face any real discrimination as a woman architect when I was working in various architectural offices in the Bay Area in California in the 80s. I had the privilege of working for 3 different women architects. One of them, Bobby Sue Hood, had been a California state architect. And in retrospect, I feel she set a good example of a role model of leaning in, of active participation in public life and discourse. Some of the discrimination and discomfort, if at all, came from within, in the lack of confidence or competitive aggression to demand more interesting work or equitable salaries. So the great humiliation of discrimination began after we returned to India to set up our practice in Bangalore in 1991. It was compounded by the fact that our partnership was both professional and personal. Internally, after some initial hiccups, it worked very well because we both had completely trustworthy partners and sounding boards for discussion and resolution of ideas, since we both ran different projects separately under one office. But to the outside world, I was always the assistant, except to my clients after they got to know me. So this is a reflection of a wide, pervasive, and discriminatory belief that women architects may not have the intellectual bandwidth and vision to lead and handle complexities of scale and technology. Women have since nailed down proof against this conclusively in the world of finance, for example, where the thinking used to be similar. So experience of these kinds of discrimination based purely on gender has made some of us quite political, to the extent that we are able to extend our empathy to others facing discrimination based on race, color, class, caste, and so on. It is in this way that I find it difficult to appreciate architecture that is self-centered, idiosyncratic, willfully excessive, and wasteful, particularly in our contemporary democratic world. This, of course, is not to knock down anything arising from the deeply personal, at the common level of our humanity, which is something else altogether and touches all of us deeply. So, unlike a celebrated woman architect who attracted much global attention and who left us quite recently, I still believe we should root our architecture in its contemporary context, including climate, in functionality with an expanded definition, including psychological comfort, and in a clever and parsimonious consumption of resources. So I think it's time to say less is more once again, to leave our egos behind when we go to work, and to let simple ingredients such as light, air, water, and the poetic visions that these inspire to be our main sources of inspiration. Thank you.